Hi, everybody. We wanted to introduce you to Isabel and Ruby, our May Face of Bold Courage. Isabel, can you tell us how long you've had Ruby for? And has she been present from the beginning? Did you get her later on?
She was a later addition. We actually only got her a year ago. We knew stuff was going on way before I got her. There's a trainer in Quebec who actually suggested it, and then I ran the idea about it in my doctors, and they were like, yeah, that's a good idea. And then everything got approved pretty quickly by service dog standards for me.
As I know from personal experience, as I've gone from no wheelchair to using a wheelchair when I need it, having an invisible versus visible disability can come with difficult challenges. Tell us how Ruby changed your experience, both negatively and positively.
Obviously, she helps me with a whole bunch of stuff, which is all of the positive. But the negative has very much been every aspect of going out in public with her, more or less. Because I don't use a wheelchair like you do sometimes. She's my marker. She's my assistive device. So when I have her out and she has a service dog vest, that's when, it goes from, oh, why are you sitting in the accessible seating to, oh, what's wrong with you?
What do you suggest? How do you suggest people approach you in a more positive way that's maybe less personal but more out of curiosity?
I don't mind people asking about Ruby.
Yep,
if
totally.
They ask like, oh, how'd you get your service dog versus what's wrong with you and why do you need that?
100%.
It's very, very different. Compliment her and move on.
Yeah.
I think my favorite interaction on because public transit is where a lot of this stuff happens for me, at least.
Totally.
Kid gets on, kid's actually in a wheelchair, says, oh, your dog's really cute. And I said, cool. His wheelchair was like all purple and super
Really?
cool looking. Yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, your wheelchair's really cool. And the kid's mom's just like, oh my God, this is the best interaction I think he's ever had on a streetcar before in his entire life.
I find that extremely cool because personally, I want things to change when they see a wheelchair or something like that. And I think sharing your story may be the best way if you want things to change, but
people come and approach you. It would be really nice to be approached like anyone else would be approached first, prior to, oh, what's wrong with you? Or asking a really personal question. Because had you done that to them, they would have looked at you and they probably would have snarled and it would have been this whole negative interaction. But people don't think about that when they're approaching people with disabilities or with different sorts of aids and whatnot.
Greatest thing about having a disability.
She's the primary one. Such a perspective changer.
Yeah.
Because not only have I learned just so much about myself, shout out to my therapist, a lot about the people around you as well and how they react. Like I've got friends, last night I was at a friend's place. It's only like 3 blocks away from my apartment. And I was like, there's no way I can walk back. So he gave me a ride 3 blocks back to my apartment. You have the other side of the spectrum where if I cancel a plan because I just can't do it that day, they get really like, oh, well, I've been planning for this, and they get super aggressive with it when you're like, I can't really control this.
Find those people who are very close to you and you know who's always going to be there for you and you know who those people can be and who those people are.
Who people are when they react to things that they didn't necessarily expect either.
Do you wish people knew more about you?
I mean, people have such depth to them, right?
Yeah.
You shouldn't be looking at someone and then going, oh, yes, they're just...
Yeah.
So if they see me and they go, oh, there's something wrong with them, and then that's their entire impression of me, usually.
Yeah.
But you just need to remember, like, you have so much depth to you.
Yeah.
So does everyone else.
There's so much more.
Gave you a little bit more grace and chilled out.
Honestly.
It would make everything a much nicer place for everyone.
So, the next question I have is, do you ever find yourself into self-stigmatization? Because I know sometimes I do when I'm walking around the street and seeing people. I jump into my conclusions, but then rethink my actions and come to realize that we're all the same. So, I'm wondering if you ever kinda sorta jump
to conclusions about yourself.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking this morning whether I really qualify to be here with you guys on this.
Which you 1,000% do. 100%.
Because it's just, okay, because the only person who can really decide whether you are, say, disabled, because a lot of people have trouble with disabled identity as just a whole.
Yeah.
Everyone will tell you different things,
Yeah.
but the only person who can really decide that is you. I have had assistance of doctors with that though, but it's I don't know. I feel like we are all so hard on ourselves, and we all take other people's opinions into account too much.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the studies that I did for the presentation in our seminar was talking about how people are more likely to identify as disabled if the people around them have reacted negatively to their impairments or situations.
Yeah.
Versus if someone's in a more supportive environment, they're actually less likely to be like, oh yeah, I identify as disabled.
Fair enough.
It's
counterintuitive.
It's counterintuitive, but it's so fascinating from a standpoint of we are so affected by how people behave around us. But that means the people who act the most negatively have the most power over us and over our self-identity.
Yeah.
And that sucks.
No, it does suck. And it's too bad more people don't know that, because then they might be better able to like control how much they let those negative comments affect them,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to not being aware of that and then them completely affecting them. That's totally fair. And you want to ask that last magic question?
What charity will you be adding to our contribution list?
So there's a service dog charity in New Hampshire called Little Angels. A lot of service dog charities are more geared toward like seeing eye dogs and guide dogs for the blind, like the Mira Foundation and the Lions Foundation. This one does a whole bunch. It's got mobility, psychiatric, epilepsy, diabetic, and I think a couple of other ones I'm forgetting.
That's okay.
And they also work with inmates and do rescue dogs. So they're kind of like hitting several nails on the head when it comes to helping different communities. They're helping, rescue dogs, inmates, and that helps with when they get out, they have job experience. And then, of course, they're actually providing service dogs for a lot of different disabilities and issues that it's harder to find companies for. Like, she had a private trainer. I got her trained privately. Her trainer does service dogs on her own, and she used to work for the Mira Foundation, but I haven't really found a company that specifically trains like cardiac alert dogs or something like that. But this one does a whole bunch of stuff, so I think it's a pretty good one. I like it, and they've got cute pictures of dogs on their website.
Yeah. Added bonus.
Yes.
That's wonderful, because I had no idea. Like the past couple of interviews we've done with these, it's actually eye-opening the amount of things that people have in communities and things I wouldn't even think of, charities I wouldn't even think of. So I'm amazed by that, and thank you for coming here and teaching us.
Yeah.
Of course.
Educating us in our community.
Yeah.
And we're really excited to have you here and to add that charity to our contribution list. So thank you so much.
Thank you.